All right, Greg,
Anthony?
thank you for meeting me. I know that you had a kind of rush out of there because I know that you were really busy when we did it on Friday. So thank you for kind of sitting down with me today and going through it. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. So talking about playing lesson with Kevin. So a lot of good takeaways, I would say. Obviously, a lot of what we talk about in here is, nitpicking for the sake of, education and for the process of just like going through the motions and identifying ways as a coach to always think about how can I improve a lesson, how can I, there's always going to be things that you can point out to say you could do better at. I don't think there's any coach that can be honest and tell you they've never messed up a lesson or felt like they could have said something or not said something. So I think it's just a good thing to get in the practice of now going forward for the rest of your time. Being a teaching professional, this is the kind of stuff that you maybe passively won't be writing down, but should always be thinking about in the back of your head, trying to find ways to improve and better deliver your message, things like that. So with that being said, I think by and large, all good things I saw. Obviously, knowing your strengths, like you're someone that is very passionate about golf, and when you're out on the golf course and in the moment giving a playing lesson, I think that's a huge strength for you because that's where you're comfortable, and that's where a lot of the teachings and what you're working on with your student can really resonate. They can see it come to life out there, and then for you as a coach also, it can give you a lot of good feedback, but also just good feelings in terms of being able to see what you've worked on with that student come to fruition, right? And in those moments, stuff that we saw that I think just things to think about where there are areas of improvement would be starting the lesson. I know like with Kevin, it's a student that you're familiar with.
Yeah, in front
right.
Yeah.
So that can sometimes make it feel, more loose, and that's totally fine, and I think it's good to adapt person to person. But with people like that, we're very comfortable with, I think we can sometimes get into that mode where we kind of breeze through the early parts and get right into the meat and potatoes. So with Kevin, I think earlier goal setting and just making sure that although you guys have a good relationship, talking back through in past lessons what you've talked about, making sure that you guys are continuously on the same page and working towards the same goal, and making sure that as he improves and works on his game and sees things change, that you guys continue to be on the same page and have the same kind of goals and mindset going into each and every lesson. So I think not that you did anything wrong, I think it's just a good make sure you take the time to really gather their thoughts and Kevin's feelings of past lessons, what he's taking into this lesson, and things that, whether right or wrong, that he's looking or seeking to get out of the current lesson, and then lessons going forward as well.
Okay.
So that's the big one that I would say is just making sure you take the time to just go through all those steps with him, making sure that you guys are on the same page. And sometimes for the student too, it's helpful for them to just get things off their chest, and golf can be frustrating, so sometimes it's just a way to, it doesn't even have to be a productive action, it can really just be something that lets them blow off a little bit of steam, and then they can be in a better mindset going into the lesson, and better able to kind of accept what you're telling them and translate that into results.
Awesome.
So I would say that's the big thing, and then just feedback in general, both for you as a coach, giving him tools to receive feedback, whether it's learning aids or whether it's observations or whatever it is. On course, obviously a little different than on the lesson tee. But with that, I think a big piece is the routine of him, the golfer, of his pre-shot, post-shot. That was a big focus in the lesson. So just making sure, we're creating good feedback loops for the golfer too, not just as the coach teaching the student going through those feedback loops, but making sure the student is getting better at that feedback loop as well, where they can say, when coach isn't out there with me playing, you know, the 11th hole and I'm in this situation, they don't need you there to process what happened and go through that feedback loop. We want them to become self-sufficient so that something we learn and talk about and go over, when that situation arises again on the golf course, then they're able to say, oh, okay, I remember me and Coach Anthony had this conversation, and this is the kind of loop that he took me on, where it's, you know, about understanding what happened, processing, figuring out how am I going to change that, and then putting that into action. So just that continuous feedback loop, I think, would be big. Obviously, you know that, and going through the lesson in that way, but you know, trying to make that so like pertinent to every lesson, to where your student then, when they're on their own, is going to start doing that on their own, and thinking about
consistent throughout the lesson.
Exactly. So making it their own.
Yep.
And then again, that's good feedback to gather in the next lesson when they come to you and they say, like, hey, I had this situation come up, and this is how I went about it and how I thought through it, and maybe the result was or was not up to what they were expecting or hoping for. But that process of them saying, hey, this was the situation, this was the variables, this was the decision I made, and this was the outcome, and you can evaluate that with the student, and that can just help going forward, so that when that situation happens again, they have, you know, better understanding of what needs to happen, what they did right and wrong the previous time, and then be able to change that going forward, and, you know, continuously just improve and use that feedback loop to their advantage. Overall, I would say, yeah, other than that, like I said, you're very familiar with Kevin, so I know you guys will text and schedule lessons and do all that, but never a bad habit to get into, to always just kind of like plant the seed and make sure that, like, hey, we're working on this, we want to get back in X amount of weeks, whatever it is. Maybe, you know, he's got vacation coming up and rounds to play, tournaments coming up that he cares about, so making sure we're fine-tuning and tailoring our approach to that, while also keeping it fun and making sure that, like, he's getting the stuff out of the lessons that he wants to.
Yeah, kind of learn, so
yeah.
Awesome.
But overall, I mean, awesome stuff. Like I said, just continue, lead with the passion, and that will take you as far as you want to go. So, you know, little stuff like that, it's just going to move the needle, and, you know, that kind of stuff is what kind of incentivizes students to promote you and talk about you, and how things like that help really improve their game. That's the kind of stuff that gets back to other students, potential students, that, you know, is going to create more opportunities for you. So a win-win.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all your time. Thank you for coming out with us and looking. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Thank you.